Democratic Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz is House Chief Deputy Whip, and we welcome her here. Congresswoman, good morning. Good to have you here as always.
Martha.
Welcome to America's Newsroom.
So,
so what did you think of his idea? You know, the Republican Study Committee, Scott Garrett and a bunch of others have come together. They say that they've outlined $2.5 trillion in cuts. Do you like that plan?
No.
No.
I know that's going to come as a shock, Martha.
Go ahead. Let me know why.
Essentially, that plan is like waving the white flag right from the get-go in our competition as a global competitor. I mean, especially in light of the visit from President Hu this week, who clearly laid out just how competitive they have been and intend to continue to be on the global stage. We are going to get our butts handed to us if we don't make sure that we are continuing to make the investments we need to be making in innovation, in technology, in energy.
All right, well,
and
let me ask
the $2.5 trillion, just for...
Go ahead.
They've actually only proposed $330 billion in cuts. Saying that they want to go back to 2006 spending levels and not naming how they're going to do that is like me saying I want to add a third story on my house, but I only have $10,000 to do it.
All right, but you know what? He had a point when he said this. He said, look, all kinds of organizations around this country, when they hit tough times, they say, you know what? We're going to have to cut back. We're going to cut back to our spending levels that we were at in 08 or in 06. You can chuckle about it, but I think that folks out there really do want to hear some substantive, and I feel like every time somebody throws an idea out there, people say, oh, well, that's just a drop in the bucket. Well, drop in the bucket, perhaps, is where you need to start. Well, let me just ask you one question. He said, why can't we go back to the, as an organization, why can't we pull back to the levels that we used to be at? And he's talking about cutting fat, like federal travel budgets, for example, Amtrak subsidies, for example. This isn't about China.
He's not talking about it. Going back to 2006 spending levels is a 42% cut. He's talking about cutting deep into the bone of K through 12 education, deep into the bone of cancer research, of health care for veterans. I mean, let's talk about what the reality of a 42% cut would be. And they're also proposing to leave out defense and homeland security.
He said we do. He said as conservatives we do need to address the Department of Defense because although we want to make sure that our fighting men and women have what they need, there are inefficiencies in that system as well that he just said on our air he wants to take a look at and address.
But they haven't proposed any. And the other pretty big concern here is that Eric Cantor, the majority leader, has specifically said, well, he'll bring the Republican Study Committee's proposal to cut back to 2006 levels to the floor if it can get 218 votes. They have 247 Republicans. If they don't have 218 out of 247, then that proposal doesn't even hold water in their caucus. Never mind in the Congress.
I hear what you're saying, and I know that this is not the way that you want to go about things. But what spending? Where do we start here? Because it feels like the American public gets it, that people are on board, that the spending is out of control, the deficit is out of control, and instead of hearing about more spending, it feels like they want to hear about. So where would you start with cuts, Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
Well, we need to start with smart cuts. We need to make sure that we're focused on, and that we examine programs through hearings that aren't working, that aren't living up to expectations.
Like what, for example? Just give me an example of something you'd like to see go.
Well, because I haven't spent some time really going through it and hearing feedback on the success, I'm not going to just give you a knee-jerk reaction and be able that we're just going to slash and burn. We need to review those programs carefully and then cut the ones that aren't working. And that's what President Obama will talk about in the State of the Union tonight. We need to make sure that we are promoting innovation and competition and making smart cuts, not repealing health care reform, which adds $230 billion to the deficit. I mean, so let's all sit down together in a bipartisan way. I agree that we need cuts, but let's do it in a really careful and smart way, not just pick a number that slash and burn.
People heard about going line by line with a scalpel through all of these programs, and I think they feel like they're just not, like nobody's actually doing it. That's the problem.
I agree. This certainly isn't taking a scalpel. It's taking a machete, and we've got to make sure that we're being smart about the budget cuts, smart about deficit reduction, not slashing and burning and hurting.
All right. Well, I just wonder what you're going to see. If you see with very little patience for more hearings and more discussions, people say, look, do what we do, get it out, and cross off, the travel budget for one thing.
Let's not review whether we're cutting smartly. Let's just cut for the sake of cutting. That's going to, when it comes right down to it, that's going to hurt people who have cancer. That's going to hurt kids who are trying to get Pell Grants to go to college. I mean, we really have to remember that we're not just spending on big government bloated programs. The spending that we appropriate helps real people make sure that they can get jobs, helps the Small Business Administration make sure that they can grow small businesses. If we slash and burn, then we're going to be irresponsible and we're going to make our economy worse.
I hear what you're saying. I think everybody's feet are going to be held to the fire on this, and we'll
I'm ready
be watching
for my
very
feet to be held to
closely.
the fire.
Congresswoman Schultz, it's always good to talk to you. We appreciate your coming on. Thank you very much.
Martha.
All right, we'll see you
Anytime.
soon.